The most impactful experience of my childhood was my family's discovery of Shrek. We love Shrek so much that we watched the Shrek musical 4 entire times, which, fun fact, is 4 more times than necessary. The reason why I still vividly remember this is because the musical inspired a practical joke my parents played on me. In the first act, Shrek's parents tell him that he needs to fend for himself as soon as he turns 7. I was 6.5 at that time. So imagine my fear when my parents also began jokingly telling me that I needed to pack my bags when I turned 7. Now, obviously, 7-year-old Alex didn't pack a rucksack and make his way down the Mississippi like Huckleberry Finn. But the joke still serves as a funny reminder of how far I've come in my own journey of independence. I certainly wasn't ready to take on the responsibility of fending for myself at that age, but as I've grown, I've realized that responsibility isn't something you choose to take on. Rather, it's often thrusted into your hands without you even knowing. About 2 years ago, I made the decision to move out of my childhood home and to live with my maternal grandmother. I always enjoyed spending time with her, but this time was different. I dreaded moving in. Not because I didn't want to be with her, but because I was scared of the reason why I was moving in. I was going to become her caregiver. My grandmother had already been experiencing a couple health complications, and following a couple surgeries, it only felt right to help her with her daily needs. These responsibilities, combined with balancing schoolwork and care, would take their toll on me. But I'm glad I took them on. Now, before I go more in detail on my story, I do want to shed some light on what caregiving is exactly. Most people don't quite know what it is, and frankly, I don't blame them. At the end of the day, caregiving is really only something you know about when you need it, as is what happened in my case. Caregiving is a branch of assisted living which covers people suffering from chronic illnesses to elderly patients who need assistance in daily household tasks. This definition might sound broad, but that's because the nature of caregiving is broad. More often than not, elderly patients require assistance in daily household tasks, and these caregivers specifically provide certain responsibilities for these patients. These responsibilities include hygiene, exercise, transportation, cooking, comfort, and a variety of other tasks specific to each recipient's condition. I'm what's known as an informal caregiver, which is the title given to family members and close friends of care recipients who take on the responsibility of a caregiver on top of their other commitments. Now, this is in no way an easy job for anyone, especially for someone who can't even get up early to make himself breakfast. Unfortunately, my combined experience as a caregiver and a student isn't unique. In fact, I'm only one out of 1.8 million other students who currently take on the responsibility of a caregiver on top of their education. Now, it's probably hard to imagine the life of a caregiver with just the definition of caregiving on its own, which is why I'd love to share with you what a day in my life might look like. Most of my responsibilities at home surround my grandmother's in-home dialysis treatment. At the start of every month, I place an order with the healthcare supplier Baxter to get my grandmother's dialysis materials. The orders vary by month, but they will almost always include gloves, cleaning solution, piping, and around 30 to 40 boxes of dialysis solution, which my grandmother uses at night. I also help my grandmother set up her equipment. The type of dialysis my grandmother is currently undertaking is known as peritoneal dialysis, which is conducted on an at-home dialysis machine. Now, the process to calibrate, sanitize, and run the machine is a complicated process that I won't go into, but just know that would probably give an engineer a mental breakdown. In addition to my grandmother's dialysis, I also help with my grandmother's daily household chores. My grandmother has a hard time moving around, so I try to limit the amount of time she spends moving unnecessarily. That entails cooking for her, bringing her to her doctor's appointments, and other tasks such as shopping and laundry. As I complete a lot of these tasks, I can't help but reflect on how my grandmother did these same exact things for me as she was raising me. And I'm more than glad to return the favor. Now, my experience as a caregiver certainly doesn't extend to all caregivers across the country, but you can probably imagine the amount of stress caregivers are under. Most caregivers report suffering from anxiety or depression due to their responsibilities at home. And as much as I'd like to say that I've stayed strong throughout, I haven't. Many days go by where I ask myself, why is this happening to my grandmother, the sweetest person I've ever known? Why is this happening to me? Why does it seem like after everything I've done, I've barely made a dent on our situation? I don't know the answers to these questions. No one does. There are millions of Americans with these same exact questions, and we're never going to find an answer to them. But there is one thing we can do. Reflect on how we're actually valuing our elders, because I can assure you that almost every single issue with geriatric care all boils down to respect. Let me show you what I mean. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services found last year that 3 out of 10 senior citizens currently living in nursing homes were abused within 2 weeks of admission. More than half of these nursing homes were constantly understaffed at any given moment in time. And 400,000 residents die annually from preventable infections. This is the reality of how we treat America's elderly. Calling it geriatric care sours the definition of care because we as a society don't care. I spent hours upon hours researching senior care with policy professionals, and our research has revealed abuse after abuse, neglect after neglect, and it pains me to see absolutely nothing happening. More often than not, our seniors are removed from their communities by their families to live in nursing homes or senior centers. But this isn't always the healthiest option. Most seniors are lonely and disconnected from the communities that they once had. As a result, in-home caregiving is preferable to outsourcing care to separate centers, but I understand that working Americans are busy. Providing for a family member on top of your personal life seems simply impossible. But that isn't the mindset we should have. At the end of the day, it's going to rest on us to create the change we need, because we're all going to get old. And if we can help our senior citizens now, we'll be helping ourselves in the future. Now, you're probably not going to do much with the swamp of information that I just gave you on geriatric care. But I do want you to consider this. If I can take on the responsibility of being my grandmother's caregiver, then you can take on the effort to support your family as well. Because at the end of the day, it's only right for you to return all the love and support they gave you when you needed it the most, when they now need it the most. Thank you.